Good morning and welcome to the live series Straight Off the Bat. Join us on Thursdays as we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from YouTube, thank you so much. Don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I hope you had a great holiday yesterday for Eid, and I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, in honor of Financial Literacy Month. Today, we're discussing financial education, a path towards inclusion. And we have the honor of having Carina Cockburn. She is the economic development professional and change leader with over 20 years of experience in the public and private sector. She was appointed country representative for Trinidad Tobago by the Inter-American Development Bank in April 2021. And she also is Jamaican Rhodes Scholar with a Master in Business Administration and a Master of Science in Economics and Social History from Oxford University. So that will explain the accent that's going to be welcome to our session this morning. Hi, Karina.
Good morning. Hi, Pauline.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to get straight into it because, as usual, people think that 60 minutes is a long time, but when it comes to financial literacy and education, there's so much to cover. So, we're going to try and squeeze out as much of information from you as possible. So, we're celebrating Financial Literacy Month, and this conversation could be relevant and is relevant to just about everybody in the world because financial our existence kind of is around money. But how can we define financial inclusion in the context of education within the financial sector? Because a lot of us may be thinking this have nothing to do with me. What say you to that person?
Thanks a lot. I think this is an extremely important topic for all adults and also young people and even children need to become aware of their finances as well. So I think what is being done on this program is really excellent. So when we talk about financial inclusion, we're really talking about extending to all citizens access to financial services, but also equipping people with the ability to make sound financial decisions. And so financial education is going to be important in terms of facilitating inclusion and ensuring that people are able to invest well, to save well, to leverage their money in the best way possible. And as stakeholders in the financial sector, it's very important that we have financial education programs to help everyone to become included in the way that they can be and should be, and to access the opportunities and services that are provided by the financial sector.
So, you mentioned earlier about this is important for adults as well as young people, which I think I am young-ish. Um, what do you think parents, when does that conversation start? Because I don't know about you, in terms of what you had to encounter growing up. But I remember the first time I got money, and the first thing I did was buy Bigfoot, which, by the way, Jamaicans are now recognizing is made in Trinidad. That's a whole thing altogether.
I saw
But
that.
I'm like, I mean, it's a
I
Caribbean
mean,
love, guys. It's a Caribbean love.
the first time I had Bigfoot was when I came to Trinidad, so I'm not sure. Maybe it's after I left Jamaica that Bigfoot became prevalent there. But yes, they're now making that discovery. Um, it's interesting that you say that about children and financial education because just during the last few weeks, one of my friends sent me a photo, a very proud photo of her opening with her 10-year-old son his first bank account. And then just on this last vacation during the Easter holidays, I for the first time gave my 11-year-old son a budget for the trip. And it's amazing how his behavior changed. Everything was now being added. Is this affecting my budget? Can I afford this? And it's very interesting how his thought processes were changed because he now had to work within a budget. Of course, it didn't help that friends and aunties and uncles were giving him $20 and all of that, which totally blew the idea of having a budget. But at the same time, I think it can be really early as 9, 10, 11 years old, that we introduce our children to financial education. And it does start at home. They're very observant. They see how we manage money. If we are always running short at the end of the month, they're going to see and feel that and observe that. In terms of official statistics, it starts at 15 years old, generally speaking. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, TTIFC has just completed a survey indicating that 75% of the population, 15 and over, actually have basic bank accounts in a formal financial institution. And those are 2023 numbers. So in terms of when we would recognize adulthood in this context, the measurements tend to start from 15 and over. But we can begin financial education for children much, much earlier.
Wow, I love our statistics. I love data. Karina, what's your son's name?
Joshua.
Well, tell Joshua as soon as he gets an Excel spreadsheet, that's it, done and dusted. Like life changes. I let's have
Yeah.
a call because
But they're not going to use Excel anymore. They're going to
true.
use some kind of accounting app or software that they
Right.
can download that comes up with all of the financials and everything else for them, a budget for them, and gives them updates on how they're doing. So it's amazing what's going to be possible in the future. But yes, we do need to develop good financial habits as early as possible.
Wow, I showed my age there by mentioning Excel spreadsheets. Thanks for a lot, Karina. Thank you for letting me know that. So you see, Jermaine agrees. Thank you, Jermaine. We are both showing our age, but that's okay.
Yeah,
That's
we
fine.
are. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when we were using these calculators, with paper printing and so on.
Mm,
But anyway,
well,
Excel.
I'm still carrying the one over. That's a whole other conversation. So let's talk about this conversation in the context of challenges because some people could be watching this and be thinking, that's easy for you to say because you have the money. And, sometimes we go through some difficult spells and it's difficult to have that conversation. So when it comes to, being able to have the conversation first and foremost, but you also may not have the education to have the conversation. So where does that person start? Because if you're in a low income situation, that's not at the top of your mind.
Yeah. So I think there are many opportunities where we can encounter financial information. And it's important, regardless of our socioeconomic circumstances, that we seek to educate ourselves and be aware. Because at the end of the day, this is our money we're talking about. And if you don't inform yourself about how to manage it effectively, then it's more likely that you're going to fall prey to different schemes or be taken advantage of in some other manner, or be defrauded perhaps. And so we all as adults have a responsibility to inform ourselves on financial matters. And so I think, not only are there many self-learning opportunities online, but if we're not online, we need to ask those people in our community that we trust, family members who may be more business or financially savvy, and consult with them about the best way that we can leverage financial services. Sometimes we may not be able to start at a commercial bank. We might have to start at a credit union or other near bank, what we want to make sure of is that these are properly registered entities. They have some level of supervision. They have good procedures in place. It looks like a professional enterprise. And we make sure that we read the fine print and reach out to your community and those family members who can help you to be more informed.
And I know it could be difficult for a lot of people because, especially, I don't know about you growing up with my parents, they didn't really want to listen to what I had to say. Um, so when it comes to this conversation around teaching kids, Jermaine has a comment here saying that parents can't teach children what they themselves don't know. So I'm gonna contribute to this, and then I would hope that you'd add to Karina. But I fell into some debt because I didn't have my parents to teach me what to do. And through Excel spreadsheets and a lot of hard work, I was able to come out of that. And now I get, calls asking me if I want loans. So the idea around parents can't teach children, I think it's an opportunity, especially now with all this information, for us to go and teach ourselves. And you mentioned earlier as well about falling prey because that lack of education, we tend to be like, okay, this big thing may come and it'll help me come out of this. So what would be your addition to that conversation?
I think we have to do it together. There's so many things that children can teach us. There's so much we learn from the parenting relationship. I think, why not seek out financial information together? Um, you know, Children and young people are getting a lot of their information from new platforms. Maybe we're not on TikTok every day, but they are, and they are self-educating from what they see and view on social media and from other interactions. And so, it's not that it's a one-way relationship where we're always teaching our children. They have a lot to share with us also. And the important thing is that we have an awareness of what we know and what we do not know, and we're open to learning. And the fact is that in many financial institutions, there has been a lot of work done to train customer service agents and other client facing personnel. And so you shouldn't be afraid to walk into a financial institution and ask the questions that you need to ask. Find out what the minimum deposit is for a savings or a checking account. Figure out if you're going to have the number of deposits that are required for certain types of accounts. Ask for information and learn together with your children and young people, and develop sound financial habits which are going to help you create generational wealth, which is something we also don't talk a lot about. But if you want to invest for your family for the future and future generations, then it has to be something that's a family affair that you do together.
Yes, that's generational wealth is not, it wasn't even in my vocabulary years ago. So the idea of getting that sort of help up is new to me, and we're in the informational age. And you mentioned earlier about that 75% having bank accounts. So what type of financial education to promote inclusion is happening in terms of emerging things that you're seeing that is new, because we are in an informational age. We are spending all that time on social media, but what is happening for us to actually educate ourselves in the financial space?
Right. So I think we're seeing more focus by financial institutions and stakeholders such as government and private sector agencies um, on financial inclusion programs, which include financial education. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, the TTIFC has a financial inclusion mandate. They're an agency of the Ministry of Finance. And they are going to be working on or have been working on a financial inclusion strategy, which will shortly be presented to the public. The idea of a financial inclusion strategy is to define objectives for financial inclusion, um, assess where we are now, who has bank accounts, who is accessing financial services, why aren't they accessing it? What are some of the barriers? And TTIFC has already done very important work there. And here in Trinidad and Tobago, cash is still king, right? Everybody prefers to use cash. And even if you prefer not to use cash, you have to find a vendor who is prepared to accept some kind of electronic transaction. So you need to figure out where you are now, where you're going as a society, and then develop a strategy to close that gap. So many countries are undertaking the preparation of financial inclusion strategies. And here in TNT, it's already been drafted and is being consulted on. Another thing that I've seen and been lucky enough to experience is the gamifying of financial education. So we're seeing where entities like the Financial Literacy Unit at the Tobago House of Assembly have developed games which can help to inform people from all walks of life about financial strategies, financial management strategies, and how to best use and access financial services like insurance, savings accounts, and so on. So they have this Money City education game, which they've deployed at a few public and community events. And it's really interesting because you get to you choose a card indicating what your profession is. So you might be a mason, you might be working in a supermarket, or you could be a CEO, and you may have different responsibilities. You may be single or married with children, or have some other responsibilities, and then things happen to you in life, and you have to make financial decisions in the moment. And this is a game that simulates for you what those decisions might be, and attempts to teach you what a good decision would be. So we're seeing that. We're seeing other innovators are working on a stock market game, and we're going to see where these interactions are just interesting and new ways to engage on financial education. I mean, we have some international examples from Africa. For example, in South Africa, where they had a whole soap opera about what could go wrong. I think it was called Scandal, but a whole soap opera about what to do, and how to manage money, and what could go wrong in different investment schemes, etc. And that has also been proven to be quite effective in terms of financial education for citizens and for a broad cross section of stakeholders.
Well, that sounds very promising because we are spending our time online. So to be able to assist with our financial decisions would be great. We're going to go on a quick break, but when we come back, I want to have a conversation with Karina around the context of Caribbean, because a lot of times you have all these apps, but it's not necessarily something that's accessible to us. So we want to learn about what's out there. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to live series straight off the bat. We're usually here on Thursdays and we speak to individuals across multiple industries who will help you understand financial literacy and education. If you're joining us from Facebook, don't forget to like and follow our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. I'm your host, Pauline Joseph, and we have the honor of discussing financial education, a path towards inclusion. And we are joined by Carina Cockburn. She was appointed country representative for Trinidad and Tobago by the Inter American Development Bank in April 2021. We want to bring her back in because we've been having a good discussion about financial inclusion as it relates to the Caribbean. We learned that in Trinidad, 75% of the population has some form of a banking with the banks. And when it comes to banking and the word bank, I just want to just kind of touch on the what is Inter American Development Bank, Karina, for those who may not know.
Thanks a lot. So the IDB is an international development institution that covers Latin America and the Caribbean. And we engage in development projects. On the public sector side, we invest in large infrastructure projects, which might be in the water sector or in transport or in trade. And most recently here in Trinidad and Tobago, we've been working on digital transformation issues. In addition to that, we have two private sector windows where we support MSMEs through IDB Lab, and through IDB Invest, we support large corporate enterprises with their expansion or social development plans. So the mandate of the IDB is really to help countries improve outcomes for their citizens, both economic and social outcomes. And our motto is to help improve lives across Latin America and the Caribbean. So we don't do car loans, we don't do mortgages, but we do have a very important role in terms of working with governments, private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders to advance their development objectives.
So to be clear, I can't get a mortgage with you. Just want to make
No,
sure. Okay,
no,
just want
no,
that
no.
to be clear.
But we have worked with HDC, for example, to increase the quantum of money that's available to lend for mortgages. So it's more at that level than at the individual level.
Wow. So it sounds like you're you're busy quite a lot of the times because that sounds like a
Right.
lot of relationships.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I
Sure.
meant HMB, not HDC. Sorry.
Oh, no worries. All right. So let's get back into this conversation around financial education. Shout out to Navin Sugan. He joins us from Facebook. Good to have you today. So we spoke about some, data from IFC, which is an entity from the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And we want to talk about technologies in the financial education space that helps folks in the Caribbean. Because, for instance, you have things like Venmo, which is, just focused on the US Robin Hood, which talks about stocks. But I don't understand how stocks work in the Caribbean space. So if I want to have a discussion around investment, because it's not something I necessarily had a conversation about with my parents because they themselves didn't know. So where does one start in the Caribbean to understand about savings for oneself in retirement space?
Right. It's interesting that you mentioned the retirement space because I really want to speak more about that in detail. But I think investing in stocks and bonds is a very sophisticated part of the financial services spectrum. So before that, you have all these other instruments, savings accounts, checking accounts, credit cards, um, loans, insurance products, pensions, and all of them are on a continuum of financial services that increase in sophistication. And so it's very important that we provide education at every level for the persons who are ready to access those financial services. When we talk about technology, there could be a basic challenge of just having access to digital tools, having connectivity, and digital skills which allow us to access financial services. So TTIFC, for example, has found, and I'm sure they're happy that I'm quoting their survey so extensively. And shouts out to John Outridge from the TTIFC who shared this survey with me. But over 50% of account holders, according to the TTIFC, don't have the skills to use online banking, for example. And so when we're talking about financial education, leveraging technology, in order for it to be inclusive, we may first have to begin by helping people to have digital skills or develop digital skills in order to be able to engage in that way. And so various programs that are being deployed by different government entities are dealing with digital skills training. And in many cases, it's inexpensive to access training in digital skills from Microsoft or other entities that are seeking to expand basic digital skills in the community. So I think that's where we have to start, and then as financial institutions and stakeholders in the financial sector, we can also then begin to build out other tools, online and in person and at the community level, and in other fora which allow us to have the outreach at various levels of that continuum of financial services. So, I think that's where we have to start in terms of technology. I hope that answered your question. I really want to come back to that, to what you raised about retirees and older people.
So I have to say, the TTIFC are family to the show. We've had Carlos Newton on the show. We spoke about cashless reality with digital payments in Trinidad and Tobago. So we put that, guys, in the comment section. So that's okay. Quote them. We want that data as much as possible. So when we want to talk about retirement, we're gonna go actually on a quick break because we had a little move on the last one. So when you come back, we want to really delve into your conversation around retirement because I need to hear this as much as anybody who else is watching this. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, a show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're doing so from LinkedIn, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe to our page to continue seeing content that will help you manage your money. Today, we're discussing financial education, a path towards inclusion, and we're joined by Carina Cockburn at the Inter-American Development Bank. So we're going to bring her back in. We have quite a robust conversation. If you've missed anything, not to worry. Once this live is ended in the next 30 minutes, you can rewatch the show. So just before the break, we were discussing the idea of stocks and retirement, and we want to get into that discussion because when it comes to financial education, I think it's so important. A lot of us don't think about retirement because, especially when you're young, you get your first paycheck. I have a friend, she's in her 20s. She just got her first paycheck, so the first thing she did was she did her nails. So when you're young, you don't necessarily think about that, and then when you actually have to go into that space, you have less time to do so. So when we're talking about financial education and the path towards inclusion, let's include our retirement guys. So, Karina, what's your say on this conversation?
Sure. So before I talk about that, just one piece of advice for your friend, which is that you should always pay yourself first, which is take out that amount of money that you're going to put on as savings, even if that's $20, if it's $50, if it's $100, always take that out first, and then you can spend your salary on those other very important self care activities. So, let's talk about the growing cohort of people over 60. So here in the Caribbean, and these are trends that we're also seeing across the world. The increased life expectancy and better health conditions means that people are living longer and more active, engaged lives. And so right now, the Caribbean population of people over 60 is accounts for about 11% of the population here in Trinidad and Tobago, 10% in Jamaica, 13% in Barbados, and 7.5% in Guyana, for example. So these are sizable cohorts of the population, and people after retirement or over 60 are more likely to be working, studying, and also spending during retirement. And so we have to think about financial inclusion of these persons, and how to best equip them with the skills to maintain their lifestyle and be able to support themselves well after 60. So, when we think about people in that cohort, in the IDB, we like to call it the silver economy. So, the silver economy is growing. The silver economy is a significant target market. And some studies have shown that by 2030, people in the silver economy are going to account for some 30% of consumption. So we all need to be concerned about this cohort. Um, they are going to be vulnerable in certain ways. So there may be increased health challenges. Here in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a significant percentage of people, not just the elderly, but people who have chronic non-communicable diseases, so things like diabetes and hypertension. So the older you get, the more likely it is that you're going to have to grapple with these health conditions. You may be dependent on family members for support, for accommodation, especially since there are limited paid living facilities for the elderly in many Caribbean countries, and even if they do exist, they may be costly. The pensions that we expected to rely on may be eroded by inflation, and there may be other factors which make it difficult to survive on the pensions alone. So now we need to really focus on the silver economy and what kinds of financial products would be most appropriate for that cohort, and deploy financial education programs to help this group as well. And here we're talking about private pension contributions that people in the silver economy might want to make, insurance products that are suitable for them, reverse mortgages, and other tools that may be necessary for older people to protect themselves and be well informed about financial options. And I don't think that we should dismiss the ability of older people to use technology. I think, you know, anyone who has grandparents know that they're living on WhatsApp, they're sending all these memes. They can understand how to use technology to their benefit. And so financial education programs for the silver economy also need to focus on technology use, how to access and use products that may be beneficial for them, financial advice on how to manage their assets, and mechanisms to protect themselves and their assets um, from fraud and abuse, which I know we've all heard stories about elderly people being taken advantage of in this way. So I think it's really important and something that we would want to work closely with BAT and other stakeholders on going forward.
Wow, that was a lot of like invaluable information. I'm taking notes because well, first and foremost, I'm like, do I fall in the silver economy in 2030? Like I'm like calculating it. Like, am I there yet? In addition to that, I could also add to your data because we see a lot of uh, people think that Facebook is dying, but it's not, especially within the older space. We see a massive growth in folks over 50, and they are very engaged on the platform. So when it comes to financial education, I think that's a huge gap that a lot of businesses don't necessarily think about when they're using technology. But on the flip side, I will never forget when I had to assist a friend's grandfather on the internet and he was typing in HTTPS colon
Cool.
slash slash. I'ma just take your advice, Karina, because it's really hard for us to have those conversations with them. But you're right.
But once they get it, they become experts.
Absolutely. No, you're right. You're right. And I think we're remiss if we don't have the conversation around businesses because I think there's also maybe a responsibility there because you spoke about pension as well. Is there a way for businesses to also include financial education as part of their training? Because a lot of companies may have a training budget. So why do you think that would be important for businesses?
Yeah. I mean, and I think you've touched on something really important there because it's not just about businesses that employ many people, but micro, small, and medium sized enterprises who also themselves need to access financial services. And so, in terms of a corporate entity or some other firm that's employing people, it's really important to have financial education. And I think it starts even with understanding pay slips. There are lots of stories of people who have been overpaid, and then the company comes back and says, well, we've been overpaying you and we're going to deduct this from your salary over the next few months. And so it's part of the responsibility of the employer, I think, to make sure that their staff, their employees, are well informed about how much they're to be paid, the deductions that are being made, the contributions that are being made to pensions or health insurance, etc. And where those benefits are not being included, and so that they can seek out opportunities to have that coverage themselves. And so I think a responsible employer will deploy financial education programs for their team, particularly where there may be vulnerabilities and a lack of financial literacy among some of the workers. So that I think is a no-brainer, absolutely critical and important. And as you build the capacity, the financial capacity of your employees, I think businesses will find that this has benefits for them in terms of the engagement that they are able to have with their staff. So I want to turn to MSMEs quickly because even though Trinidad and Tobago is doing pretty well in terms of individual bank accounts. I mentioned 75% of adults do have a basic bank account. And this is above the world average, right? So the world average of people holding a bank account in most countries is 68%. And in Latin America and the Caribbean, there are even more unbanked people. The average is 55% of adults have a bank account. So 75% is not bad. Um, we see that on the MSME business side, most are not able to access a bank account and don't have a bank account. According to the TTIFC study, 77% of MSMEs do not have a business bank account. And, let's not even talk about accepting digital payments. A greater proportion, over 80% of them are not able to accept digital payments, which it goes hand in hand because you do have to have a relationship with a financial institution in order to accept digital payments. So there, I think there's a lot of work to be done. Um, it's not just on the demand side, not just among MSMEs, many of whom I think would like to access banking services, but also, to be honest, on the part of financial institutions, and maybe how they're interpreting certain Know Your Customer guidelines and the efforts that they should be making in order to have more MSMEs coming on board with bank accounts. And so what's happening now is that businesses are leveraging their own personal bank accounts, and you have this conflation between my personal finances and the finances of my small business, which really shouldn't be happening. We should be able to access business bank accounts as well. And that's where we really need to do a lot of financial inclusion work, in my opinion.
Yes, I can attest that it is difficult as a business owner. You wanna between what you plan to do and what is going to happen, that space in between, you want it to be as painless as possible. But a lot of times there's so much steps that you have to take. Thankfully, it took me some time, but I got my first business loan this year, and it was a big deal for me because it took 13 years and a lot of hard work and a lot of mistakes, because I hired an accountant 3 years ago and she's like, you did this and you did this wrong. And I was like, it's funny because I did all these mistakes, but it's now affording me to hire you to tell me that I did all these mistakes. So it's a complex situation. It's very hard, and I hear exactly what you're saying. I feel it in my bones, and I think that the landscape is changing. So I have hope. I'm gonna get cramped, just like crossing my fingers, but I hope that we're gonna, and we have programs like this to have these discussions.
Yeah. And
Um,
Pauline, just something you touched on there, which is financial inclusion for women in particular and women business owners specifically. It's very helpful for every society to engage women in financial services. And where that is happening, we've seen significant economic growth occurring. Women tend to reinvest in family, reinvest in communities, um, and I think it's very important that financial institutions focus on empowering women and have financial education programs specifically geared towards women and female entrepreneurs. And there are many examples across Africa, for example, where um, they have seen a significant engagement of female entrepreneurs. One example my colleagues like to use is Togo, where women, female business owners, more than 70% of them have been able to access business loans. And there's no reason that the same thing can't be happening here in the Caribbean. And this should be an important growth area for most banks and financial institutions. And I think some of them have already begun programs to support female business owners. And I think we need to continue to focus and expand these programs.
I definitely agree. I'm living proof of of why it's so important, because of that we're now able to hire people who then contribute to society because they're making that salary. So we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to pivot a little bit to some of the success stories, because I saw you recently posted about the Next Gen board, and you had someone called Joshua Hercules speak about, former at-risk youth, speak about the transformation. So we want to talk a little bit in the space of success on what that means for us as a society, because I'm always hopeful. So we'll be right back. And welcome back to Straight Off the Bat, the show that helps you understand financial literacy and education. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you're doing so from Facebook, don't forget to like our page to continue seeing content that'll help you manage your money. Today, we're discussing financial education, a path towards inclusion, and we're joined today by Carina Cockburn. She is the country representative for Trinidad and Tobago at the Inter American Development Bank. So we've had a lot of discussion around financial inclusion in terms of parents, an aging population, which, by the way, I don't fall into yet. Woohoo! But at the same time, we have to be mindful,
It's not
because
a
I take my wins where I can get it. Okay, the gray hair is there, but that silver economy, it's taken a little while before I join it. But it's important to understand what the silver economy is and what it means for us, thinking about pension. And you said that thing around the paycheck. And when you're a business owner and you're giving your pay slip to an employee, most people aren't thinking, well, I have to educate that employee about what that pay slip means, because as an employee, I'm thinking, you just taken half my money. Like, why is this going? So I think it's a great idea for folks out there to educate their employees. So we want to talk about, success stories, because you've been in the IDB for a few years. And when it comes to financial education programs, you know, what are some, give us a success story in that space, because I think a lot of us need to have some visualization of what that means for us as a society.
right. So a lot of the work that we do is around supporting digital businesses. We also support businesses in the innovation space. We support female founders of these businesses, and many of them have accessed IDB funding in order to grow and develop their businesses. This evening, for example, I'm going to be at the announcement of the winners of the third call for the Shaping the Future of Innovation program, which is a collaboration between the IDB, the EU, the Ministry of Planning and Development, and its agency, Cariri. And that program is helping entrepreneurs to expand their existing entrepreneurs, existing businesses, to expand their businesses in an innovative way. And so I think there are many, many beneficiaries who have been able to move forward with grant financing. In terms of what we've seen in financial education internationally, it's very important to measure the impact of financial education programs. In Brazil, we've seen training programs for high school students. Remember, we talked about educating children and young people. And, they did a before and after analysis, and they found that the financial proficiency of these students did improve over time. Some programs have been less successful. You know, we've seen studies in India where um, there was just a 2 day financial literacy training, and people became more aware of financial products and practices, but they didn't really improve their level of financial literacy. So it's clear that we need more in-depth programs than just this, you know, two day type of intervention. So so that's very important to know. We've seen literacy training for specific types of customers. In Mexico, they were training credit card customers, and you know, they were attempting to increase financial knowledge, but really important that the intervention changes not just your immediate behavior or makes you increase your awareness, but actually changes your habits. And so, again, this was a very short type of intervention, like just for 4 hours, and people didn't really change their habits or behaviors. And so it's important when we design these programs that we think about the objectives, the groups, particularly vulnerable groups like people in the silver economy or people with disabilities, and really focus our intervention on changing their behaviors over the long term, and help them to form positive financial habits in relation to how they access loans, how they use credit cards, um, how they save, because you can get into trouble really quickly if you have access to these tools with and products without the requisite knowledge of how to use them in the best way.
Definitely great advice, and I can I can contribute to changing habits because I learned to swim 7 years ago, and it wasn't a 2 hour session. Obviously, it took years and years. And when I started, I couldn't go across the pool. I started at YMCA in Trinidad, and 7 years later, I've done two half Ironmans. So I've swam for 2,000 kilometers each race. So it took some time. And I think we need to be kind to ourselves because a lot of times we tend to think, because of social media as well, we're like, oh, I need to get this now. But sometimes we fail. We have to go up and we have to do it again. So I love that piece of advice to look at doing it consistently. And I want to shout out to Candice. She really appreciates this session and the conversation around financial inclusion. And it's great that people want to learn about this because I think that's also being receptive to it is extremely important.
Yeah. So if I could just comment on that swimming analogy you gave, I think, you know, it's really interesting how we make decisions about investing in ourselves and our own capacity. And that's something that it may not be a skill that you use every day, but it's something that you, Pauline, chose to do to invest in yourself as a person who wanted to embrace new knowledge. And I think for financial education, I really want to emphasize the importance of that self-awareness of the need to have that skill as an adult, as someone in charge of your own life, and managing your own finances, and the independence and autonomy that gives you as an individual. It's just essential that we educate ourselves and empower ourselves to make wise financial decisions.
Completely agree. And I think it all ties in because my ability to get out of debt put me in a position where I can afford to learn to swim, and then I can afford to do these races because bicycles aren't cheap. But I gave myself a carrot each time, and it was frustrating sometimes, but definitely it was worth it in the end because there's other aspects of your life that changes. So financial inclusion means having the freedom to do what you want, and I think a lot of times, these hurdles and challenges in front of you and you can't see it. But sometimes you have to be a little delusional.
Dream bigger, dream bigger.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, and it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
those things are true. You actually have to give yourself this story and you follow it to suit. So I want to kind of close off the session with the importance of financial education and how we can work together to be more inclusive, because this is a we conversation. It's not a you should do this and you should do that while I do this. And you've had quite a plethora of data to share with us, and I thank you so much for that. I love data, and I'm probably going to use that in my future conversations with my friends. But why do you think it's important to have that we conversation to be inclusive as a society?
Yeah, I think that it's really important. It's really important for the entire society to move forward and improve. And we mentioned something earlier about generational wealth. We want our neighbors, our citizens, our family members, our friends, our colleagues to have social mobility, to be moving forward, to be empowered, to buy some of the things that they just not only need but want, in order to have fulfillment in our lives. And we just want everyone in the society to have access to the appropriate financial products, to have that independence and autonomy to be able to manage their own finances, to have an understanding and the ability to make appropriate financial decisions for themselves and their families. And this increases the wealth for the entire society, the prosperity of the society, and it is an important aspect to addressing certain social challenges that we have right now, like crime, for example. So as we move everybody up the continuum in terms of access to wealth and financial security and well-being, then we start to begin to address some of the root causes of some of the social challenges that we have in the society right now. So I can't overemphasize how important it is for us to help each other to progress in terms of our financial literacy, and to make this as inclusive as possible. Um, and of course, there's a role for financial institutions in this. There's a role for community organizations. There's a role for government. There's a role for parents. We touched on that earlier. And for us as the Inter-American Development Bank, an economic development institution, it's definitely a priority for us too.
Well, thank you so much, Karina. I just want to say you've now empowered me, because the crime conversation is something I have with my friends so many times. And now I can say the country representative IDB said what I said, but she has data to prove it, because there's such a strong correlation. I usually don't do this, but there is an intense conversation that happened on the LinkedIn comment section. And I just want to address Aisha for a minute here. And I would love to hear your take on this. They're having a conversation around financial education in school, and basically, but we have to remove the taboo and shame surrounding money so that parents will play their part confidently and comfortably. So, do you have any take on that before we close off this session? Because I feel like it's important to get some feedback from you on this.
Yeah, that's a super important point because we have so many divisions in society, and in my own country, Jamaica, I mean, it's definitely on the basis of class and money. So I think there are many different stakeholders in this challenge. As parents, yes, there is a stigma and shame about where we began, our family situation, what socioeconomic group we came from, how we even speak, and there's no other way to get out of it other than earning your own money and being able to manage your own finances, or else it's going to continue generationally for you to be in the same socioeconomic circumstances as your forefathers. And so this is just a very important step you're taking towards your financial independence and also changing your socioeconomic status if that's important to you. So it's you have to educate yourself about financial products and opportunities and basically learn how to manage your money effectively.
Well, thank you so much. And on that note, I'm actually going to say goodbye now. Thank you so much, Karina, for joining us today and sharing insight into financial education path towards inclusion. Shout out to an OG Desiree Jack. Truly insightful was the feedback from her. Completely agree with you. I think this is a well needed conversation that we need to have over and over again. If just by the way, a little quick announcement. If you're a resident of Williamsville or St. Mary's Village in Moruga, we are having a financial education caravan, which will be rolling into your communities next Thursday and Friday to help you manage and grow your money. Click the link in the comment section. So I think it's on there or there, depending on where you're watching this, YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook. Just head over to the comment section and you can register there. And you can also sign up to be notified for our next live show via the comments. And as always, be sure to like and follow our page to continue seeing conversation on financial literacy and education. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.